Welcome to this Choose to You Sociology topic video on crime in contemporary society, focusing on types of green crime. One of the biggest issues with defining what is a green crime is that many green crimes aren't actually against the law of the nation in which they originate. However, due to the transgressive nature of green crime, in that the harm caused by the act can have impacts on other nations, sociologists look to approach green crime by measuring the harm to the environment that these acts cause. This has led to the development of green criminology, which focuses less on the legal definition of crime and more on the harm that is done to the environment. One such sociologist involved in green criminology is Professor Nigel South, who argues there are two distinct forms of green crime: primary and secondary green crimes. Primary green crimes are committed as a direct result of the destruction of the environment or degradation of the Earth's resources, and we'll look at some examples of these shortly. Secondary green crimes focus more on the deliberate breaches of laws that look to protect the environment, such as the role of government and eco-mafias that look to profit from circumventing environmental laws. But first we'll look at some examples of primary green crimes. Air and water pollution are two such examples of primary green crimes, and these have a devastating impact on the environment. Air pollution in particular has grown with the expansion of industrialisation and urbanisation, with pollution from increased numbers of factories, vehicles and homes, particularly in the developing world. This is also linked into the consumption of fossil fuels rather than using renewable energy sources. Water pollution has increased in recent years, with the growth of non-reusable goods such as single-use plastics in everyday life. Another factor in water pollution is the waste generated from manufacturing, which often contaminates local water supplies, particularly the use of chemicals. A further example of green crime is deforestation, the cutting down of forests and use of green spaces. Whilst primarily this is done to provide timber, the use of former forest land for the grazing of livestock has increased due to the demand for meat in the West, whilst other green spaces have been cleared to facilitate manufacturing plants, particularly in the developing world. Often this deforestation comes as part of a structural adjustment policy put in place by international government agencies such as the IMF, as is the case in Cameroon, where almost 75% of Cameroon's trees have been cut down to repay debts and develop land for manufacturing. Further green crimes include desertification, the overuse of land to the extent that it becomes infertile. As demand for primary goods such as coffee increases in the West, nations are encouraged to grow more in order to keep the price of coffee down for Western consumers, and this overcultivation of land leads to desertification. A final form of primary green crime is species extension. Deforestation, desertification and mass urbanisation have led to estimates that 50% of the world's species of animals will become extinct over the next 10 years. And this also includes the export and ill treatment of animals, which would be classified as green crime. Secondary green crimes are often more deliberate in nature. For example, the sale of toxic waste to organised crime syndicates who then dispose of it illegally is one form of secondary green crime. Another form of green crime is also a corporate crime, the sale of waste to private industries, who may then export that to nations with less strict environmental regulations is another form of secondary green crime. A third form of secondary green crime is environmental discrimination, using up the resources of those in areas of deprivation rather than targeting those in more affluent areas. For example, placing refuse collection areas in areas of high economic deprivation, or shipping waste from the UK to the developing world. A final form of secondary green crime is the influence of the state in combating groups that look to challenge those that cause harm to the environment. States often act to criminalise the activities of those protesting for cleaner air and water, utilising Marxist concepts such as law creation. An example of this is the recognition of many environmental groups in the USA as eco-terrorists, criminalising the activities of those that target firms that have poor records on pollution and equating their activities with terrorism, often to get around complex laws on human rights. In the UK, this has been seen in protests against fracking, the building of infrastructure such as rail and runways, where those protesting have been remanded in custody and charged for protesting against what they perceive to be environmental damage by companies. That concludes this Choosing to Use Sociology topic video on crime in contemporary society, focusing on types of green crime. Thanks for watching.